Good afternoon, and welcome to the North Carolina Center for Afterschool Programs webinar on child poverty. My name is Sharonda Witter, and I'm the manager of NCCAP. We are so delighted that you are here to participate in our webinar today. If you have any technical difficulties or delays on your end throughout the webinar, please keep this number handy. You can call in utilizing this number and meeting ID, and you can hear the webinar live. We will also post the video of the webinar on YouTube and our website, ncafterschool.org, tomorrow. During the webinar, if you have any questions for our presenters, please make sure that you put them into the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. So without further delay, our agenda for today, we're so honored to have three presenters from three wonderful organizations within North Carolina who are doing amazing things regarding child poverty and this issue. First up, we have Whitney Tucker, who's from NC Child, and she will provide a snapshot of child well-being in North Carolina. Next up, we'll have Pushti Patel from Interfaith Food Shuttle, and she will talk about fighting hunger through after-school programs and some of their initiatives there. And then also we have Kim Condola from the Wake Salvation Army, who will talk about one of their initiatives, Project Catch. And again, we'll get 2 questions for all of the presenters at the conclusion of all of the presentations. So without further ado, we will begin with Whitney Tucker.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Sharonda. So again, my name is Whitney Tucker, and I am Research Director at NC Child. So my title today is based on a common greeting among the Maasai people of Kenya, which translated in English means, "And how are the children?" And the hopeful response that you get from someone else, "All the children are well," is an indicator of how the larger society fares. And I think that that holds true here in the US and in North Carolina as well. When children are thriving, and all of the children, not just a select few, our state is at its best. And where we can work to improve outcomes for all children, we're working for the future prosperity of the state at large. This is just a quick overview of the things that I'm going to cover in my presentation today. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about NC Child and the work that we do, and then contextualize child well-being a bit for you so you understand how poverty plays out in child development and why it's so important. Then I'm going to talk about Kids Count South Carolina, which is going to give us some data snapshots of how children are faring in the state. And I have a slide here that's going to ask questions, but with the way that we have things set up today, all of your questions will be collected, and then we'll address them at the end of the presentations after all 3 of the presenters. So, about NC Child. NC Child works to build a strong North Carolina by advancing public policies that ensure that all children, regardless of race, ethnicity, or place of birth, have the opportunity to achieve their full potential. So when we talk about opportunity, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but essentially it's encompassing all of the aspects of child well-being. So poverty is one of the things that we want to see prevented for children to do their best, but that plays out in their lives in a lot of different ways. And so we work to advance policies that address all of the things that can impact the opportunity for a child to do their best. So that's either living in poverty writ large, or some of the things that are affected by poverty, like child hunger, like access to high quality education, etc. So the reason that we do that is because the foundation for lifelong health, academic, and economic success is built during the earliest years of life. So NC Child collects data and works on behalf of all children, which means all North Carolina children under the age of 18, right? But the earliest years of life, 0 to 8, and some people even go smaller than that, 0 to 5 or 0 to 3, are the years that are especially important for child outcomes because it can really impact a child's brain development, and it changes the trajectory of their life, the experiences that they have during that early portion of their lives. That's explained a little bit more with this graphic from the Harvard University Center on the Developing Child. But essentially the idea that you need to get in order to really understand the impact of poverty on child development is that experiences are built into our bodies, for better or for worse, and significant adversity early in life can produce physiological disruptions or embedded biological, we could call them memories, that persist far into adulthood. So a lot of you may have recently heard about adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And those experiences, things like experiencing food insecurity as a child, experiencing homelessness, experiencing a parent being incarcerated, those sort of things create a stress response in a child that makes it difficult for them to develop to their full potential. It actually changes their neurological connections and can really impact their health. And so these impacts on their physical and mental health then play out in later life with significant impairments to what a child is often able or likely to achieve. Right? So we see that genes and experiences then interact to determine an individual's vulnerability to early adversity. So for children who experience particularly severe adversity, which is often something that goes hand in hand with experiencing poverty as a child, environmental influencers, what research is showing us is that they appear to be at least, if not more powerful than genetic predisposition on their impact of the odds of having chronic health problems later in life. And those problems then, of course, impact things like employment and also educational outcomes, because they change what a child is able to focus on and able to achieve. So all of that I just kind of distilled into these 3 points for you guys. Essentially, development is highly interactive. Life outcomes are not solely determined by genes. The environment in which one develops before and then soon after birth provides powerful experiences that chemically modify certain genes in ways that can define how much and when they are expressed. So while genetic factors, they do exert some potent influences on human development, environmental factors have the ability to alter family inheritance and to change the trajectory of a child's life. So the stress of exposure to adverse childhood experiences can derail children's healthy growth and development. And then throughout early childhood, children need early, consistent, and high-quality supports to promote and sustain their developmental gains. And that can include a lot of different programs and activities, but essentially children who live in poverty are very unlikely to actually get access to those high quality supports. So what we want to see is fewer children living in poverty and therefore more likely to receive the consistent early supports that they need to be on the right track to grow and develop into healthy adults, the adults that are going to create the future that we want to see for North Carolina. So research tells us that the best predictors of success for children are a healthy start at birth and healthy development in the early years, being raised by 2 married parents, having adequate family income, doing well in school, and graduating high school and completing post-secondary education or training. Young people avoiding teen pregnancy and substance abuse, being able to stay out of trouble, and becoming connected to work and opportunity also have really big impacts. So NC Child focuses on the 5 areas that you'll see on your screen to support children's development and help to ensure the future prosperity of the state by preventing those outcomes that I just talked about. We do that in a few different ways. So as research director, I work primarily in data and research to collect data on child well-being and then to create the sort of materials that make that accessible to our General Assembly, to community activists, to families, to parents. And then we have a strategic communications team that works to make sure that the way we message that data is the most salient way for those different groups. And then we have policy advocacy work, where we go directly to the General Assembly and to people who regularly speak with the General Assembly to explain how what's best for children can play out in legislative work and different policies that we want to see. And so community engagement multiplies all of that. We have a community advocacy network that you can sign up for at ncchild.org to receive updates on different pieces of policy and legislation that are affecting children and families. But that community engagement is what really makes sure that all of the work that we do gets out and that people are aware of what's best for kids and what we can do about it. That translates into a lot of wins for kids and legislative victories, right? So those things create the change that we want to see in a lot of different little ways that work together when people are aware and active about what they want for children and families. So you guys are taking the first step in doing that today by being on this webinar and getting more educated about child poverty in the state. So one way that you can stay up to date on what's going on with kids is by following Kids Count North Carolina. So NC Child is the Annie Casey Foundation's Kids Count Project grantee for the state of North Carolina. And the Kids Count Project was created in 1990 to provide quality data and policy tools to inform decision makers. And it enables NC Child through funding and technical assistance to release our research and data publications and updates throughout every single year that help you to make policy and advocacy choices in the best interest of our state's children. The map that you see on your screen is actually of all of the different Kids Count organizations in all of the different states. Currently, the Kids Count program funds grantees in all 50 states and DC, as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So all of their data is accessible through the Kids Count Data Center online for free. And the way that you can get to that data center is on your screen now. You can go to ncchild.org, click on our data tab, and then right there on the page, you'll see the Kids Count Data Center, and you can pull it up and search for child well-being data in any state. NC Child is currently updating all of our indicators to the most current data year, and that will be complete by April of this year, but you can get up for most of the indicators now up to about 2013 or 2014 data. That being said, the most recent data on some of the salient issues related to child poverty are right here, and I'm going to go through some of them to help you guys kind of get an idea of what's happening for kids and what that means for you as advocates. So first, I started with women with health insurance because research shows that the access and availability of health care for women of childbearing age, so that's women ages 18 to 44, has a big impact on infant and fetal mortality rates, which obviously impacts children's healthy start right from birth, right? So in order to have healthy births, we need moms to be healthy far before they ever become pregnant. And in North Carolina, that is less likely than in a lot of other places because of a lot of chronic health conditions like diabetes, hypertension, smoking, that health insurance can really help women to counteract and to mediate. So nearly 1/3 of women in North Carolina of childbearing age receive late or no prenatal care. And that is a big problem because early prenatal care and care in that first trimester is associated with much better outcomes for children in the long run. The reason a lot of women don't receive the prenatal care that they need, however, is often tied back to poverty. So 22% of children in North Carolina live in poverty. And that impacts the ability of mothers to have that health care that they need and to receive vitamins and that sort of thing that they actually need to stay healthy while they're pregnant. And then once children are born, it decreases the likelihood that they will be able to keep their children, that they will be able to provide safe environments for their children, and that their children will be able to have the daily interactions that research has shown us are really necessary for them to make those neural connections that I talked about earlier that can really keep their brains growing and healthy and lead to the kind of cognitive and academic outcomes that we want to see for kids. One of the reasons that so many children live in poverty is that many children in North Carolina live in families where their parents lack secure employment. And so when I say secure employment, I mean that their parent has full-time, year-round employment, and that's at any income level. So for children living in single-parent families, this would mean that the resident parent did not work. What you're seeing on the chart, I just want to explain it. For children in single-parent families, this means that the resident parent did not work at least 35 hours a week for at least 50 weeks in the 12 months prior to them being surveyed for this. For children in married couple families, this would mean that neither parent worked at least 35 hours a week for at least 50 weeks in the 12 months prior to the survey. And then children who were living with neither of their parents were listed as not having secure parental employment because those children are likely to be economically vulnerable. So what we see obviously is not what we want to see. 3 in 10 North Carolina children live in families where no parent has that employment. And then when parents are unemployed, or when they're employed, but they're employed with wages that are too low to support a family, they're limited in the investments that they can make in their children's development. And what I mean by that are things like high quality early care and education. Transportation options are limited, and that can really impact their ability to get kids to the type of things that we want every child to be able to experience, like getting to school on time, getting to after school programs, right? Having access to the kind of things that can enrich a child's life that we often take for granted for parents at higher income levels or with full employment. I also want you to note that I listed this information by race in the state so that you can see that obviously for some families, this is even more prevalent of an issue than it is for others. So nearly twice as many African-American families lack secure employment than white families in the state. And what that means is that African-American children are less likely than white families, than Asian Pacific Islander families, to be able to access all of those supports that we just talked about. And the same goes for Hispanic and Latino children, right? And so when we start talking about what families need so that children don't live in poverty, we need to start looking at the sort of wages and the sort of hours that parents are working so that we can decrease disparities, and starting with the populations that are most significantly negatively impacted. So you'll see that racial disaggregation here again with median income among households with children. So that varies widely in the state by race, and so it gets beyond what the earlier slide was talking about with children whose parents have secure employment generally. This is employment that can actually help them to stabilize a family, right? Even having a job, if it has too low of a wage, doesn't necessarily lift a family out of poverty, and that's what you're seeing play out in this slide. The red line and that $59,600, that is the state total. So that's for any race, that is the median income among households with children. But as you can see, for African-American families, for American Indian families, for Hispanic Latino families, their household median income is much lower than that state average. So those families need particular supports to make sure that those children do not fall through the cracks and fall into poverty. I showed this slide so that you guys have an idea of what's going on for children who are currently in care, because those children can't rely on their parental income to keep them with all the supports that they need, and they rely on the foster care system. So 34% of North Carolina children who are currently in foster care do not exit to permanency within 2 years, right? And so that is important, that 2-year marker, because children do best in stable, supportive families, and we know that from research, but longer periods of time in foster care are associated with a greater risk for children of never achieving a permanent placement. So that means that they will never either be reunited with their own family or find a foster family who can take them in and serve as that stabilizing force economically and also, socially and emotionally. And so those children are much less likely to have that permanent support in their lives, and that can lead more children to then eventually end up in poverty and in adverse circumstances. Young children not enrolled in school. I put this one in here because there's so much good research out there that tells us that when young children, so we're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds particularly, are enrolled in some sort of school, some sort of pre-kindergarten supportive early learning environment, that they do better down the road in terms of high school graduation rates and their test scores in 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math, that those children are less likely to be involved with the criminal justice system, that those children are more likely to be employed as adults, to have higher earnings as adults. And again, all of this leads back to poverty, because young children not being enrolled in school in some cases is a parental choice, but in a lot of cases really comes back to parents being able to afford that early education and being able to afford the transportation that gets a child to that early education, and being able to find a high quality provider, and all of those things, that social support that would help you find a provider, the ability to access even internet, right, where you could even just Google, that sort of thing. All of that leads back to your family economic circumstances, which are really dictated by poverty. And so right now, more than half of the 3 and 4-year-olds in North Carolina are not enrolled in any form of school, which means that they are less likely to have all of those positive outcomes that I've listed there on the slide. So then just one more time, just taking a look back at the fetal and infant death rates with what I was talking about with mothers being able to access prenatal care. North Carolina is ranking 39th in the nation for infant mortality, and fetal and infant mortality are both thought to be driven by maternal well-being. So health insurance is obviously important when we're talking about that, but all of the things that we have previously discussed will never be addressed if we don't start at the start, right? So with those fetal and infant death rates and that maternal health, all of that could prevent some of these outcomes, right? If we can get children to have that healthy start, genetics do play a part in this, but a lot of it is, the sort of environment that a child has once they're already born. And we want to make sure that children are getting that start as strong as they can before they get thrown into all of these other aspects of child well-being that we've been through this presentation. Before it ever becomes an issue, if their parents can afford quality early care, before it ever becomes an issue, if their parents are able to get that wage that they need to support a family. A loving family does a lot for a child all on its own, but if the children are never actually getting the chance to be born into the world with the healthy start that they need, that we're not doing enough for our kids even before they get here, right? So all of that can be fixed with policy. This is something that we need to start looking at policy options to address as well. And so if you need to contact me for any research on child well-being or data analysis of new policies that have come out that impact children and families, you can see my email address and my phone number here on the slide, as well as the other staff of NC Child. And then you'll also see our Twitter handle and our Facebook handle. And again, our website is www.ncchild.org. And so now I'm going to pass this off to the next presenter.
Good afternoon. My name is Pushti Patel, and I am a Director of Community Health Education with Interfaith Food Shuttle. So I would like to start out by briefly introducing what Food Shuttle is, what we do, and hopefully that will connect some dots on why I'm here today. So Interfaith Food Shuttle is a nonprofit organization. We are a relatively small food bank and a member of the Feeding America Food Bank Network. Currently, we serve Central North Carolina, including Wake, Durham, Johnston, Orange, Chatham, Nash, and Edgecombe counties. We are based in Raleigh and Durham, so most of our hands-on programming are heavier in and around those areas. So as a food bank, we do a lot of food recovery and distributing to our low-income neighbors, but we also know that putting food on a plate is not enough. So along with food distribution, we provide innovative programs designed to empower people with skills to meet their own food needs through culinary job training, beginner gardening, and health education. And within those programs, we aim to build capacity to work with after-school programs so that we're able to address childhood hunger. And so during this presentation, I will be talking about some of our current program models that we have in place, where we collaborate with several other after-school programs in the region with the overarching goal of addressing hunger. So Mobile Tasteless Machine is actually a food truck that we have that goes out in the community to serve hot meals to kids and pregnant women. According to North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, there are 118,000 children who have applied for free and reduced lunch in the 7 county areas that we serve. And as we all know, these school meals are a clear, effective hunger safety net. But there is a gap in access to meals when these kids are not in school. And that especially happens during summer months. So the Mobile Tasteless Machine aims to fill that gap by serving hot meals prepared by our culinary staff. They are complete meals, meaning each meal includes a grain, protein, fruits, and vegetables. And currently, our mobile tasteness machine goes out to 3 different communities in Wake County and operates through months of April to October. We also provide meals by partnering with Wake County Read and Feed. Wake County Read and Feed is an after-school literacy program that provides meals, tutoring, and books to children from low-income families in Wake County. And we partner with them by providing hot meals. Currently, we prepare about 1,500 meals a week. And so this partnership is interesting because I believe it is part of a grant, and Read and Feed pays us at cost for us to provide these meals. And I also want to, And I also want to mention that during summer months, we partner with other agencies as well to provide hot meals. Some of these partner agencies may have free summer camps going on. Some of them may provide half-day or full-day programs, or they even be just one-day events. I had mentioned earlier that as a food bank, we do food recovery and distribution. So from the food that we recover, we're able to sort out snack foods and deliver them to after-school programs. Currently, we do weekly deliveries to 6 schools that are in Durham and Wake counties. And those deliveries are only made when schools are in session. So from about September to May. Most of the sites that we serve are through our partnership with communities in school. And we also provide snacks to Salvation Army of Wake County. And because Salvation Army runs programs all year long, we do deliveries year-round as well. Our after-school snacks program heavily relies on our donations. And so for that reason, building capacity and growing that program is very challenging. Since this presentation is only focused on after-school programs, I did not include a slide on Backpack Buddies, but Backpack Buddies is also one of our other programs that addresses childhood hunger. And so our Backpack Buddies program typically provides a child with a bag full of 10 to 12 pounds of groceries that they're able to take home and prepare meals that would meet the gap of breakfast and lunch that they would otherwise eat at school. And usually the school system identifies the students who receive Backpack Buddies. So unfortunately, we're not able to serve schools that benefit from that program when they go to a traditional school calendar year. However, we are able to reach out to some of those kids who are part of Communities in School of Wake County, and also the kids that go to year-round schools. One of the ways we try to be innovative in addressing hunger is by providing health and garden education. Sprout Scouts is one of our after-school garden education programs that we have in partnership with the school systems, currently only in Wake and Durham counties. Sprout Scouts is for elementary age school, but can be modified for older age kids as well. The curricula focuses on teaching kids about healthy foods. It really hypes them up about loving and enjoying healthy foods and also eating them every day. It includes lots of fun and hands-on activities that teaches kids how to grow, how to prepare, and eat healthy foods as well. And most of the sites where we implement Sprout Scouts have a garden, which kind of fosters that hands-on learning experience as well. The curricula also engages parents and guardians through the take-home activities. The take-home activities really create dialogues at home when kids are out of school. That kind of, creates a discussion on how to eat healthy at home and when kids are outside of school walls as well. We started implementing Sprout Scouts last year, fall of 2017, and since then we have collaborated with 5 schools in Durham and Wake counties, and potentially we're going to partner with 6 more schools by end of this school year. We do aim to build capacity for Sprout Scouts. It is based on train the trainer model, so if you are located in one of our 7 county areas and are interested in bringing this program to your school or your community, please let us know. We also offer nutrition education through after-school programs. The program is called Cooking Matters. It is an evidence-based program that is developed by Share Our Strength, which is a nonprofit organization as well. And they have different curriculums available for different populations, including adults, teens, kids, families, and parents. Cooking Matters for kids is very specific to students in 3rd through 5th grade, and Cooking Matters for teens is specific to teens that are in 6th grade through high school. And both of those curricula aim to teach kids how to prepare healthy foods, how to make healthier choices when eating out. And along with that, it teaches them self-sufficiency in the kitchen. Cooking Matters is typically 6 weeks long. Group meets once a week, and it runs for about 2 hours. The first hour is focused on nutrition education, where they acquire knowledge on different types of food groups, why it is important to eat different varieties of foods, how to eat balanced meals, learning how to read food labels, and also making healthier choices when eating out. The second hour typically focuses on culinary education, where they learn about food safety. Kids especially enjoy learning knife skills and how to properly, use the knife, cut fancy. And also it gives an opportunity for the group to come together and prepare a recipe. The recipe typically goes along with the nutrition education component for that day. And so if they're talking about eating more fruits and vegetables, then the recipe will have lots of fruits and vegetables in it. And one of the most liked recipes is turkey tacos, where not only trying turkey as the meat, but also different vegetables in the meat mixture, like sweet potatoes, zucchini, carrots, mushrooms. For the teens class, participants usually are given a bag of groceries that they can take home, and that way they can try out the recipe at home with their families or their friends as well. We offer Cooking Matters through various partner agencies, but for our Cooking Matters teens and Cooking Matters kids, we collaborate with a lot with school system itself, but also other agencies that conduct after-school programming, like the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, and Communities in School. Cooking Matters is also based on Train the Trainer model, so we're able to train volunteer instructors who team teach the courses, but also train staff members who are able to implement the program in their respective agencies. So if you are located in one of our 7 counties and interested in implementing this program, please let us know. And currently we're trying to do Sprout Scouts and Cooking Matters with the same group, where we're trying to alternate so that kids are learning how to cook healthy, but then kids are also learning how to grow foods and know where food comes from, and kind of incorporate both the models into one. So far it has been successful. Kids really enjoy it, and we're able to keep them engaged for more than 6 weeks at a time. So might not be a bad idea to try both. Those are some of the programs that we specifically have in place that have worked well for us so far. Unfortunately, we are limited to 7 counties that we serve, but there may be other food banks in your area that may have a lot of these opportunities as well. If you would like my contact information or learn more about the programs that I talked about, please visit our website at www.foodshuttle.org. And I will hand this over to our next guest speaker.
Hi everyone, my name is Kim Conderla and I am the case manager at an organization called Project Catch. We are an outreach organization of the Salvation Army of Wake County, and Project Catch stands for Community Action Targeting Children Experiencing Homelessness. So our mission is to equip families experiencing homelessness with resources for the well-being of their children, and that's anything from mental health care, physical health care, after-school programs, food, clothing, anything that families may need for their children. Project Catch was formed because we noticed that children that are experiencing homelessness were going widely unidentified and unnoticed. And so on the surface, they look like every other child that you will encounter, but underneath there is a significant amount of vulnerability, mental health concerns, and developmental delays. And so our outreach is targeted to specifically provide intervention for these kiddos. So nationally, 1 in 30 children will experience homelessness every year. You can think about that being 1 child in every classroom. And in Wake County, the county that Project Catch serves, there are about 5,000 children that we've been able to identify. So that's a lot of kiddos. And we were ranked 44th out of 50 for child homelessness care in our nation. And so a lot of the concerns that we address are trauma and maltreatment. We know that trauma significantly impacts the development on a child's brain, as Whitney talked about earlier. And in a more applicable sense, if we're working with kids in classrooms or after-school programs and summer camps, we're going to see that a lot in how kiddos behave. They don't have that same capability of self-regulating. They're making more risky decisions. They're overdiagnosed with ADD, ADHD, have a lot of hyperactivity. And a lot of times, we talked a lot about food insecurity, and kiddos that are hungry have a harder time focusing. When their basic needs are not being met, they're not nearly as concerned with other things going on where they are. And so we see a lot of chronic health conditions with our kids too, just because of what they're exposed to, the lack of appropriate health care. We see a lot of asthma, a lot of obesity just for lack of proper nutrition, exposure to inappropriate environments and things like that. We see a significant increase in their mental health needs, depression, anxiety, ADD, ADHD. 98% of women that are experiencing homelessness have experienced domestic violence. So the children that they are bringing along with them have also experienced that domestic violence. So it just gives us a little bit of an insight into what's going on in their little brains. And so what we do to kind of intervene is we do assessments with each kiddo that comes through our program. We do a psychosocial, which addresses all basic needs, food, clothing, talk about how they're doing in school, previous experiences, have they had mental health care before, what's their physical health care like. Then we also do social emotional screenings to find out where children are as far as their emotional management behavior and things like that. And so based on what we find in those screenings, we connect parents to support resources. We have a very strong focus on early intervention for those little ones, the 0 to 5 kiddos that we know that's a really important time in brain development. We talked about how trauma impacts their brain connections, their synapses, and how that impacts their entire life trajectory. And so we have a very strong focus on connecting kids to early intervention to kind of mitigate the risk that they've been at for that. So we work with a lot of shelters to help them implement these policies within their shelters to better care for their kiddos. Because a lot of times we've seen parents come in with big problems and their children are sometimes treated like accessories. They just come along and they're not necessarily treated as individuals and assessed for what their needs are. And we also do a lot of advocacy within the community for our kids. So our direct services at Project Catch, we do case management. So that's what I was talking about. We do those assessments, we talk with the parents and then connect them to resources that they need. The screenings are part of that case management. And then also within Project Catch, we have a support group called Circle of Parents. This group meets in 3 different locations, and it is a child abuse prevention program. So parents will meet with the parent group coordinator and the kiddos will meet with the kids group coordinator, and they all do activities that support that healthy attachment, healthy emotional regulation, and all that good stuff. And we also have a program called More Than a Roof that's specifically for families living in hotels because they face a very specific set of barriers. We see a lot of times our kiddos that are living in hotels, especially our little ones, have significant motor delays, significant speech delays because they don't have anywhere safe to play, they don't have anyone safe to talk to, they don't have those opportunities to play with friends and develop language skills that way. They don't have as many books because they're moving around and they can't keep things with them. And so their language is pretty significantly delayed. So we collaborate with a bunch of agencies in our community. You can see at the top our referral partners. Those are the folks that are sending us their kids. They're identifying them and sending them our way to help support the families. And then below that are some of our community partners that we refer out to. Things like clothing, mental health care, diapers, after school stuff. That's just a few of them. Another part of what we do is informing our community about trauma. So we do trauma trainings with professionals in the community, and we do a lot of community education on the impact of trauma and how that affects our kids in schools and then later on in life as well. So this is about, this is probably a year snapshot. We serve about 450 to 500 kiddos a year. With More Than a Roof, we house 12 families a year. We are able to assess about 90% of our children with those developmental and social emotional screenings. And we're training tons of community providers in trauma-informed care, which is really great. And Circle of Parents is doing an awesome job. They've served over 600 children and families through their groups every week. So our vision is to influence state and federal policies, particularly as they pertain to our littlest ones, the 0 to 5 kiddos, implementing consistent and sustainable screening processes in shelters, so making sure that our shelter partners are addressing the needs of their children and supporting them in whatever their needs are. We do a lot of development of materials for others in the community and other communities so that they can better serve their children experiencing homelessness. So that's everything from a trauma-informed care toolkit to an early intervention toolkit, all the resources that you might need to start addressing those needs. We do our best to increase enrichment opportunities for our children, so connecting them to those after-school programs, those summer camp programs that are going to expose them to things that they haven't seen before. You know, there's the theory that you can't become what you cannot see, and so we try to connect our children to things outside of what they've known. And then our last one, serving as a community hub on issues related to childhood homelessness. So we are advocating in our community for the needs of our kids. If you need any further information, you can go to our website for all of our contact info.
So we only received one question during the webinar, and so we've already had our presenter Pushti answer that question in the chat window. And so if there are no additional questions, this concludes our webinar today. We are eternally grateful to Whitney, Kim, and Pushti for joining us today to share insight on child poverty from their various organizations and how they're working to address this issue for our kids across the state of North Carolina. So our recording of this webinar will be available starting tomorrow on our YouTube as well as on our website, www.ncafterschool.org, which is at the bottom of your screen. Be on the lookout for information regarding our next webinar, which we're hoping to host in March on health, child health. So that's all for us today, and we thank you for joining us.